Hi everyone, welcome to The Wrong Opinion. Today I'll be discussing my thoughts and opinions on the film The Odyssey, directed and written by, I believe, Christopher Nolan. I'll first start out by saying the movie is 3 hours long, but I do think Christopher Nolan could have maybe made a case to the studio or whoever he needs to report to that he required maybe 20 more minutes, because there were two storylines in the movie and one of them was really underdeveloped. As it so happened, luckily it wasn't the main storyline, but this movie could have been far improved if the second storyline was given better thought and attention. The second thing I wanted to say before moving on to the characters is that the sound quality of this movie is far and improved from Nolan's previous movies, Tenet and Oppenheimer. Both those movies had an audio issue for whatever reason. Maybe it was a creative decision. I've heard that it was also perhaps due to the cameras Nolan likes to use. He likes to use IMAX cameras, which make a lot of sound. But either way, this movie didn't have the sound issues of the previous movies. There were some instances where I felt the characters were mumbling or muttering incoherently. It might have been a creative decision, but it didn't take away from my understanding of the main plot of the movie. So it was okay overall. Another thing I wanted to address, and why I probably won't be addressing it, is the controversy surrounding this movie. I think it might have to do with the casting choices and some of the creative decisions, like the American accent, when it's usually a British accent that is used in these sort of historical pieces. I might address some minor points, but on the whole, I won't be talking about the controversy. I'm not so interested in it. One thing I will say is that I think it has come a point where we need to, or movie makers sort of need to introduce a new energy to movies, maybe especially in these historical pieces. But that is a discussion for a different time. I will say where Nolan's different creative decisions, how they might have affected my perception of the movie, but I won't go too deep into much of the controversy. I will start out with talking about the minor characters. First of all, Zendaya as Athena. I forgot which goddess she is. Okay, so Athena is the goddess of wisdom and warfare, the Greek goddess of wisdom and warfare. It doesn't matter. I think Zendaya, overall, in general, I really like Zendaya. I think she brings a certain kind of energy to her roles and just wherever she goes. It's a very open and warm sort of energy, which I think this role did require, because she was a guiding figure for the main character Odysseus. She didn't have too much of a role to play, but what she had, I think she did a solid job. She did good. I liked her in the role. She didn't have too many words, but I guess the character was written that way because the gods don't interfere too much in human affairs. So I liked her in her role. I would have maybe liked to have seen more of her, but she was fine. She was good in the role. The second character I wanted to discuss was Lupita Nyong'o. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm sorry if I'm not. Lupita Nyong'o plays Helen of Troy, which, as I understand it, was a controversial casting choice, because a lot of people were saying she wasn't Greek or she didn't look Greek. To be honest, I don't particularly care. I thought she did really well as Helen of Troy. She really portrayed her anger and her bitterness to have a war that killed so many people in to have been started in her name. And she brought a different energy to the Helen of Troy in the Troy movie with Brad Pitt. Neither are wrong, but as I said previously, it's nice to have a different energy in these sorts of movies. And Lupita Nyong'o did bring that, and I enjoyed her as Helen of Troy. She didn't have much to do, but she did well with what she had. Moving on to the final minor character I wanted to talk about and who added to the plot of the story is John Bernthal's character, who played Menelaus, the king of Sparta. John Bernthal got famous from the Punisher series. And over here, I could not see him as Menelaus. I saw him as the Punisher. I'm not sure why. I do think John Bernthal can depict different characters that are not similar, but that wasn't done here. Initially, he did come across as a king who is a broken man, but is also maybe a brute. But then after that, he was simply the Punisher. And he was too mild-mannered, and not even the broken, ferocious Punisher. It was more the Punisher who maybe didn't lose his family, whose wife didn't die, but she divorced him, and now, he's sort of trying to find his way back to finding himself again. That's the sort of character John Bernthal seemed to play. Again, he didn't have too much to do, really. Unfortunately, him and even Lupita Nyong'o were part of the storyline that was underdeveloped. So that could also be one of the reasons. The script maybe let him down, which has been a reoccurring theme in many movies in 2026. So that's really all I had to say about John Bernthal's character. Moving on to the major characters, I will start with Tom Holland, who plays Telemachus, if I got that right, who is the son of Odysseus, the main character of the movie, played by Matt Damon. And someone mentioned, which I think may be appropriate criticism, is that Tom Holland is a little old for the role. Because I think, if I'm right, the whole conflict in Ithaca, which Odysseus is the king of, is that since now Odysseus is presumed dead, his wife Penelope has to remarry so that Ithaca can have a king again. And her son is too young to take the throne. But Tom Holland looks quite mature, not old, but mature enough to where that plot doesn't seem to make sense. Unless I'm missing something. I'm not sure. I have read the book The Odyssey, but it has been a while, so I don't remember too much from the book. But the whole plot line where Penelope doesn't want to remarry and she has to keep delaying getting a new husband, choosing a new husband, does not make sense. But even then, even keeping that aside, there was something about Tom Holland, his portrayal, that did not fit. I don't know if it's the American accent. Maybe if he was allowed to keep his British accent, he may have fit into that era, into that historical period. We all know this is all fiction anyway, but just for believability's sake, authenticity maybe. The American accent did not work, or he just was not a good fit for the role. Don't get me wrong, I really like Tom Holland, so I was happy to see him in the movie, even though his acting wasn't up to par of what I believe he's capable of. Again, it could be because this plot line was underdeveloped, and perhaps the most underdeveloped character is Tom Holland because he's supposed to carry the second plot line. It's on his shoulders. It's not on Penelope's or Robert Pattinson, who is another character in the second plot line. It is Tom Holland who has to carry this plot line, and the script again failed him. The script for the second plot line was weak, and it did its damage. It came through in the acting, because you can't bake a cake with certain missing ingredients. You are going to get an imitation of a cake. So in that sense, the problems with the acting with Tom Holland, John Bernthal, even Anne Hathaway to an extent, which I will get onto later, it could be because the script was weak. But I was happy to see him. His storyline did have some payoff towards the end. There was some satisfaction. But overall, his role was weak. But I was still happy to see him in the movie. Now, moving on to my favorite part of the movie is Matt Damon's Odysseus, which is interesting because I was in the comment section of, I think, the trailer for this movie, and someone had commented that they thought Matt Damon was the wrong choice for Odysseus. But I think Matt Damon was a genius choice for Odysseus. Maybe it was risky for Nolan, but I think in this aspect, Nolan knew what he was doing. Matt Damon has this unique ability to add a certain down-to-earth humanity to his roles without bringing the role down, without losing some of the grandeur the role requires, and a certain versatility as an actor that very few actors have. In fact, I would argue no actor currently in Hollywood has the sort of unique blend of acting characteristics. It is sensational to watch on screen. It's something unique, and I think he was an excellent choice for Odysseus. I had no doubt about this, even though there may have been doubts, from the internet, from other people, and maybe even I had some doubts, mainly because I was not happy with some of the quality of Nolan's previous movies, mainly the sound. But I had no doubt about Matt Damon's ability to play Odysseus and bring something unique to the role. He did do it. He is the star of this movie. I wouldn't go so far as to say he carried the movie on his shoulders, because Christopher Nolan carried some of the movie on his shoulders. Not as an actor, obviously, but with his fantastic direction of Odysseus' journey, of his travels, of the obstacles he had to surmount. I mean, we could talk about Christopher Nolan as well, as playing a role in the movie, in the narration of the movie, not just as a director, but as a presence. His retelling of the Odyssey is unique, and it broke the fourth wall in a very unique way. He brought the Odyssey to life in such a way that if someone has ever thought that, I would much rather be part of a world where magic exists, gods exists, god and goddesses, monsters, it would be far more interesting. It makes you question yourself, would it? Is your life right now so bad? Would you really prefer that kind of excitement in your life? And especially when we come to a scene, the first time this happened was the Cyclops scene. I'm sorry if this is a spoiler, but I'll just include this. I truly felt guilty forever wishing that I belonged to a different world, to a fantasy world. It brought the action to life in a way that you felt there was no barrier between you and what's happening on screen. Even though I did not watch the movie in IMAX or 3D, I don't think this movie is available in 3D, but even though this was not a 3D movie, I felt the Cyclops could have easily walked out of the screen and into the cinema. Nolan brought something very different and very unique to this movie that I do feel has broken boundaries, has brought something new that other directors now have to reach. I don't think any other director could have brought this sort of magnificence and realism to the Odyssey as Nolan did. So I applaud him for that. He definitely needs to be celebrated for the portrayal of the many adventures of Matt Damon, of Odysseus. It was fantastic, truly. This movie should be watched at least once, just for the pure experience of it. So yes, to finish off, Matt Damon gave us 110%. He did bring something unique to this role. He was, in my opinion, the perfect choice. And his storyline was the main storyline. We spent most of our time with him as an audience, and that saved this movie. Coming on to Anne Hathaway. I do think Anne Hathaway was a good choice for the role. Anne Hathaway has an ability and has the braveness to depict emotions in a real and ugly and broken way. I don't mean that as an insult. Emotions, darker emotions, grief, anger, bitterness, these are not pretty emotions. And she doesn't allow the audience to think that they are pretty, even if the woman expressing them is beautiful. They are ugly emotions, and she has the courage to express these emotions in a very real, raw way. So I applaud her for that. Again, the script failed her. She didn't have much to do, even though in this respect, Nolan could maybe be given a pass, because as far as I remember, Penelope doesn't have much to do in the Odyssey except grieve her husband and try and keep the suitors at bay. And the way she does this is weaving and then undoing her weaving so that she can prolong the time before she has to make a choice. So this might not be anybody's fault, but in some scenes it does feel like she's overreacting. I think one of the reasons being because the love story between Penelope and Odysseus is very underdeveloped. And so when Odysseus is thinking about Penelope, or when Penelope cannot stand being with another man because she's still so in love with her presumed dead husband, as an audience, we are unable to understand it or connect with it. But when Anne Hathaway had to deliver the emotional impact a certain scene required, she was there, she was present, she delivered it. She hit that scene home, the emotions for that scene home. So she was good, she did the best with what she had, and she delivered when she needed to deliver. The final character I will talk about, because this is getting a little too long, is Robert Pattinson as Antinous. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I think Robert Pattinson has come a long way, and I think we can all agree, from his Twilight days. He has established himself as a fantastic actor. He has established his reputation as a fantastic actor, and it is earned. I do love him, love his acting whenever I've seen him. I think the most recent movie I've seen is Mickey 7, if I'm not wrong, or 17. Fantastic. It was an amazing movie, and I loved his portrayal of it, and I don't think anyone else could have done that role justice as he did. Again, here Robert Pattinson is underused. He's supposed to be this really slimy character, a coward, a despicable character. But as an audience, we never really got to hate him the way probably Nolan wanted us to. He was trying too hard. Pattinson had to try too hard to be despicable. You could see that because he just didn't have as much opportunity to develop his character. So Nolan cast a lot of talent in his movie, but he underused a lot of that talent. So Robert Pattinson, Tom Holland, to an extent Anne Hathaway, underdelivered in this movie. But I think it may be due to certain creative decisions. Maybe because the American accent did not suit Pattinson in this movie. It modernized him in a way that at least took me out of the movie. But also, I think that would not have mattered if the script had been stronger. So I think the problem is the script. But overall, to summarize my thoughts, this movie is solid. It falls short of being a masterpiece, but it is solid. It is enjoyable. There's not a dull moment. And to be honest, Nolan could have tacked on 15 or 20 minutes to this movie, and it would have served the movie better because he could have used that time to develop the second storyline. So, because the good parts of the movie, which is maybe the majority of the movie, maybe 70%, is with Matt Damon and is really, really good, I would give this movie a 4 out of 5. But the weak parts of the movie are quite weak. So those are my thoughts. Thank you for listening.